Hey guys, my name is Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I am going to focus on a topic that is very dear to my heart and partially why I do what I do, which is to help set you up for the most positive, empowered, confident parenting experience possible. Today, we are gonna go beyond birth and talk about postpartum, which is technically the first 6 weeks after birth, although today's topic can happen into the first year after birth. One of the main concerns I hear from you mamas is that you are worried about baby blues or postpartum depression. Maybe you've heard scary stories or you've seen the news and you want to know how to avoid it. So today, I'm gonna lay it all out for you. We're gonna talk about what is baby blues versus postpartum depression, what are the signs, what maybe makes you more likely to experience it, and then what you can do about it. No stress, knowledge is power, and so I wanna get into it so that you can be more prepared and equipped to recognize if there might be a problem before it becomes a long-term issue affecting your relationships or your bonding with your baby. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, go ahead and subscribe down below, especially because I'm gonna be focusing more on after baby related topics in the near future. Share it with a friend, and then let's get started. Let's be honest, having a baby is probably one of the most stressful things that you've ever done in your entire life. It is a huge life change for you guys. So that being said, I want to lay out what is the difference between baby blues and postpartum depression. But before I get into that, I need to recognize that these are two different disorders, different things that could happen in the postpartum period, which remember is that 6 weeks after birth, which technically can turn into like the next year after birth. So usually it's within the first 6 weeks, but flex and flow on that one. There's this group of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that exist in that period of time. Baby blues being one of them, postpartum depression being one of them. But I wanna just recognize, and I'm not gonna talk all about them, but there's postpartum OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. There's postpartum anxiety. That one is coming up a lot in the research. We're finding that women are actually likely more anxious than they are depressed a lot of times. There's postpartum psychosis, which is those things that you hear in the news of the women who have done very scary things to their babies because they can't recognize that there is something wrong. There's panic disorder, there's bipolar, there's all these other different mood disorders, which are kind of within like the whole psych realm. But today, I'm only gonna talk about baby blues and postpartum depression because they are two of the most common things and things that I think are talked about a lot. I wanna recognize first that postpartum depression is different than postpartum. I hear all the time people referencing postpartum depression as I had postpartum, when really like everybody has postpartum. That is that time frame where your body is healing from having a baby. So you, yes, have postpartum. But hopefully you're not gonna have postpartum depression, which is just depression within that postpartum period. So when we compare the two, having a baby is super stressful, but it also leads to a few things. You're extra tired. You're of course gonna be a little bit anxious because you have this newborn baby you have to try to keep alive and take home when you're like, wait, how does anybody think that I can do this? You're breastfeeding when like you don't know how to breastfeed yet. This is all very new for you and your baby. You're learning your baby. There's all these new things. And then you add the whole like, hey, who am I now? I've lost my whole life now, or it feels like maybe you lost your whole life now. And there's this new lifestyle, which now you have a human being to take care of in this new life that will be the rest of your life, right? Of course, that's gonna be a huge transition for you guys. So I wanna recognize that having a baby is stressful. I hope you've heard me say that already. And so I wanna say that a lot of these sensations, a lot of these symptoms are very normal for that first few days, couple of weeks, which is baby blues. So baby blues happens within the first 14 days after birth. And that is just that normal transition from the time where you're like, what just happened to my life? You might be a little bit sad, and as much as having a baby is super happy and you're like, yay, I've been working for this child for 10 months and growing this human being inside of me and finally I made it to the end. Of course, there's a little bit of a loss of your old life and what does the future look like? That is normal. You might be a little bit tearful. Some of this stuff comes from your hormones where you have these mood swings where you're super high and then you're super low. You might feel a little anxious that you feel like you're worrying about your infant, of course, because you have that whole mama bear thing where you want to protect them, you want them to grow up healthy, and you want to be doing the right thing. Along with those mood swings, maybe a little bit of irritability is also super normal. You might be extra sensitive. You might be super tired. Imagine that when you have a newborn, you're not sleeping in the same way that you used to. And so all of those signs of baby blues are totally normal. Up to 50 to 80% of women are going to experience some of those sensations, some of those feelings in that first 14 days. Now, the key with baby blues is that it will fix itself on its own within the first couple of weeks after birth. If you keep feeling some of those signs and symptoms, then that's when it's like, okay, this might be moving into a postpartum depression. And so what I wanna say is, if you are a new mama and you're within that first couple of weeks, or maybe you're pregnant right now, I want you to be aware of those signs so that if you do have a little bit of baby blues, you can nip it in the bud, you can talk to your partner about it, you can get the support, and then really use that as an alert, like, look, I wanna be honest with my feelings and I wanna recognize that like, I'm feeling a little bit tearful. I'm feeling pretty anxious. My moods are high and low. And so with that, I want to do some things to prevent myself from progressing into a postpartum depression. Postpartum depression usually will be triggered within that 14 days and beyond, although they say that you can start anywhere between 3 days on. And your symptoms with postpartum depression would be significantly stronger. So all the little oh, I'm so tearful, I'm overwhelmed, I'm feeling a little anxious, this would be a lot deeper of a type of a symptom. So postpartum depression is where you don't feel like talking to anybody. You feel like isolating yourself. You cannot sleep at all. You maybe have a really high temper where everything you just want to scream and throw things, and your mood is a little bit stronger than just oh, I'm so tearful, and now I'm oh, I'm so happy. That this back and forth is a lot deeper sense of emotions. Maybe you have a hard time making decisions. Maybe you have a really hard time sleeping. One of my childbirth educator friends talks about that if you could hand your baby to somebody that you trusted and you knew that baby was entirely taken care of, that all of their needs were met, that no one needs you, the question is, could you go lay down and sleep and actually just let go and really rest? And if the answer is no, that could be a sign that you might be dealing with a postpartum depression. And I would even lead towards maybe a little bit of a postpartum anxiety, which they kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. You might have mixed emotions about your baby. Maybe you kind of feel like you resent your baby. Maybe you're I'm really trying hard to be bonded, but I'm having a hard time feeling really connected to my baby. Now, a lot of times when you list off these symptoms or you Google them online, those symptoms are gonna be oh, okay, they're typical mood disorder type symptoms. Now, what postpartum depression may sound like is, I don't think my baby likes me. I'll never be normal again. I've lost myself. I want to cry all the time. I had a woman recently tell me a story of how she didn't understand why, but people would be in her house and living their normal life. And what she wanted to do, and what she actually did end up doing, was go to the closet, close the door, and cry as deep and as hard as she could. And she had no idea why. Those are signs that you may be looking at a postpartum depression. Now, what I want to say about that is that there is absolutely no shame in any of this. There are some things that may predispose you to a postpartum depression. I'm not even going to talk about what predisposes you to baby blues, because having a baby kind of predisposes you to baby blues. And we're not entirely worried about baby blues. That's not something I want you to be stressed about. If you feel some of that and it resolves on its own, excellent. Baby blues, I'm sorry, it wasn't just the most elated time in your life, but really postpartum depression is when we start to have some issues that we really want to take care of and nip in the bud before they become something that does affect your long-term relationships with your partner, with your baby, etc. So some of those things that may predispose you to a postpartum depression are gonna be, there's the physical ones and then there's the social ones. So the social ones are lifestyle things, having financial issues, being homeless, being a teen mom, being a single mom, not having the social support around you, maybe having relationship strain with your partner. Finances are actually probably one of the number one things that can really affect you to set you up for maybe a postpartum depression. Birth trauma, if you had a really hard birth experience or you had complications in your pregnancy, complications with your birth, or your baby maybe went to the NICU, or your baby had complications, all of that is going to potentially add risk to you potentially having postpartum depression. Some other things that may predispose you would be if you already have a history of depression, if you have a history of anxiety or any kind of mood disorder, that will set you up. If you have a family history, if you have a history of trauma in your life, and I'm not just talking about trauma from birth, but like say sexual trauma or physical trauma, domestic violence, all of that may set you up to be a little more predisposed. There's actually a little bit of a correlation with infertility, like if you required fertility treatments or IVF. And then just think about added stressors in your life. Having a baby is stressful enough. And so then when you already have so much high stress in your life and then you add a baby to it, it's gonna potentially affect your mood. Now, what I wanna say with all of these risk factors is that does not, just because you have risk factors, it does not mean that you are going to have a postpartum depression. Really, the statistics say about 10 to 22% of people will have a postpartum depression. So it is pretty common, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that just because you have some financial stress in your life, you're gonna have postpartum depression. The best thing you can be doing, guys, is prevention. First of all, you're watching this video, so that's gonna give you some insight into what to be looking for. Partners, especially you. This is on you a lot of times to start recognizing, look, she's not quite the same. There's something going on with her where she's a little more down, she's more irritable, and some of that, yes, is hormones and postpartum and post-pregnancy, but at the same time, you want to be aware to ask some of the questions. Ask her how she's really feeling. And women, be open about how you're feeling. There is no shame in those feelings, and some of them are uncontrollable. The best thing you can do is be honest about what's really going on inside, so that then you can seek out some answers and some treatments to help with the problem. So what are some of the things that you can do to help with the problem? First of all, some super simple things like self-care, okay? When you have a baby, you're not sleeping, you're not eating as much, you're probably not drinking as much as you maybe should. And so partners especially, we wanna be extra sensitive that she is getting the nutrients that are gonna help rebuild her body, that's gonna fuel her to be able to take care of the baby and breastfeed. Now, mind you, I don't wanna forget you partners either. Let me just side note that you partners can also have a postpartum depression. It's a paternal postpartum depression with a little bit of a different pathophysiology because you don't have the same maternal hormones that are shifting from being pregnant to not being pregnant. But it's stressful to have a baby. And so I wanna recognize that that also can happen with you, and I'm mostly focusing on mom here. And I'm looking to you to be a reference and a resource to her to help to avoid a long-term effect on your family. So nutrition, enough fluids, exercise, getting outside, getting sunlight, seeing nature, watching the birds fly in the air, all of those things are gonna lighten the mood, take her out of her environment. A lot of times it also feels very isolating to be at home for that first 6 weeks, especially if you're used to being on the go. Go for a walk, encourage her to do a lap around the neighborhood with baby in the stroller, get some sunlight, do some breathing, some meditation. And then really a lot of this is social support, guys, that when you feel isolated and alone, everything is harder done alone. And so think about now, when we talk about prevention, that now's the time to set up who are gonna be your people that you can call to say, look, I'm really struggling, I need some help. Who are gonna be the places, or where are the places that you can go to get the food and the nutrients that you need when you don't have the energy to maybe cook for yourself? Who are the people that you can be totally genuine and honest with to process your feelings? And I would say women that have had babies before, and then also women who maybe haven't had babies before. You know, partners, who are your getaway people, of people that you can go to talk about this transition and really reflect together? Go find something that you can do to stay social, and then also recognize that like you're not just in baby land, that you can like, oh, be an adult and have friends and continue your life. Ladies, I highly encourage you to get outside the house and do some of the normal routine-y type things that you typically do, because again, it feels so isolating and you get nervous about leaving, or like, what does it mean to put, like I'm scared about putting the baby in the car seat, and what happens if they cry in public, or what if I have to breastfeed in public? Like, do those things and do them in baby steps. Do them when you feel ready, but hear me now. I encourage you to get out there and start living your life. That will help take you out of the black cloud around you. Now, sometimes that's not enough. Let's be honest that like if it is a true depression, there may be nothing, no social support, no yummy soup that can get you out of bed that day. And so partners, again, I'm calling on you, but also there are professional resources out there, guys. You are not alone. You are not to blame, and with help, it can always get better. And so this is where there is an entire specialty of experts called perinatal psychologists and psychiatrists that specialize in the postpartum period. They understand the hormone component. They understand if there's something else going on. They know the right questions to ask, and they can help set you up with a care plan that's gonna help you to recover, to move past it, to bond with your baby, and ultimately have a more positive postpartum experience, because it's not just all about the birth, it's also leading up into the rest of your life with this newborn baby. So if you recognize that maybe you're experiencing some of these symptoms, maybe this kind of triggers a, hey, wait a second, hold on, this sounds a little more familiar than maybe you would want, I encourage you to reach out to a loved one that you trust and that can help you along this process. Tell your obstetrician or your midwife, call them and say, look, I'm having some symptoms that I think may sound like a postpartum depression. Can you help set me up with a perinatal psychologist, psychiatrist? Do you have any resources for me? And then start talking about it, guys. There's so much stigma surrounding mental health stuff. And for me, I'm like, the more we talk about it, the less weird it gets. Again, this is not your fault. Some of this has to do with your hormones. Well, a lot of it has to do with your hormones in the postpartum period. There could be an inflammation thing going on in there. That's like a whole nother side of research that's coming out that may have to do with inflammation. It could be socially related. It could be lifestyle. It could be genetic. There's a genetic component that has to do with the family history. And so all of that, let's just be honest about it. Let's talk about it. Let's go to our mommy and me's and stimulate some of these conversations. Be the courageous one that's like, guys, I'm struggling. And guess what? The moment you say that, I guarantee you the girl next to you or across from you is gonna be like, look, I've felt that too. And then you don't feel so isolated and alone. You can actually talk about it and start to move past feeling stuck and alone and in this deep, dark cloud of depression if that's what you're feeling. So to clarify, baby blues happens within the first 14 days after birth. That's just your kind of mild moodiness, anxiety, little bit of sadness, not like this, oh, I'm in like baby bliss of the best world and it's everything that I ever dreamed. Everything isn't perfect in the first 14 days. It resolves on its own. Past 14 days, if you're experiencing those same symptoms, but like in a little deeper way where you're really struggling, having sleep issues, deep irritability, temper, you can't focus on anything, kind of racing thoughts, all of that would be something to say, uh-oh, something's going on. Let's reach out, let's get some help. Start with your partner, start with your OB, start with a loved one. And when you talk about that, then start thinking about ways that can get you out of your house, start doing some of that self-care stuff, and then ultimately reach out to get the right resources so that we can fix the problem and help you through it so you don't have to do it alone. I will also link some resources down below that you can go to, some websites. One of my favorite ones for Los Angeles, if you're in the LA area, Southern California, is Maternal Mental Health Now. They are awesome. And so go there, find those resources, and get help. With help, it can get better. Thanks everyone for being with me here today. If you want more from me, you know that I have full childbirth classes on my website. If you are a VBAC mama, I have an entire VBAC class for you. If you want to work one-on-one with me, you can do that. We do it via Skype for anyone, anywhere in the world. I would love to continue to walk alongside you, help you feel way more confident, way more ready, set you up to avoid some of these issues, and if they happen, to know that you have the support walking alongside of you for the rest of your pregnancy and into the postpartum period. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe down below. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye. Let's do it. Oh my gosh, yes. And really, I'm not even gonna talk about what predisposes you to baby blue. I'm not even gonna, reflection. What's the word? A long-term effect. Let me say that a little more articulately. We are rolling.
I'll say we're rolling.
Sorry, we're rolling.
Just wait for action.
Okay.
Right?
Oh my gosh, cute. Wait. Hit me.
You're a little shiny.
On my forehead?
Kind of just on the left side. Now,
Like powder status? Okay, what else? What were you gonna say?
Nothing.
Does the content clear? That was really good. Right?
Yeah.
What the heck?